Today's post is inspired by a discussion I was having with the lovely BWG71, in which I was pondering the age-old question of when did Quinn start having feelings for Carrie? There are a lot of people who think he started having feelings for her almost as soon as he met her. To be honest, I watched all of season 2 and it never occurred to me that he was a potential romantic interest. It was only when he showed up in season 3 that I started thinking, wait up, there might be something there. So with that in mind, I've gone back to season 2, to episode 4, being New Car Smell, which is where they met.
Peter Quinn.
Carrie.
Mathis.
Yes, I know.
I like your work.
Peter Quinn from where?
Same place as you.
Officer?
Analyst.
Estes Rodman.
So, let's talk shop.
Well, how many years?
6 at Langley, 4 on the Venezuela desk.
The cartels?
Like that. Are we done with the meet and greet?
Yes. Moving on.
So like I mentioned, at the time, I thought, here we have another character who's yet another obstacle and an antagonist for Carrie. Strangely enough, I didn't even notice that he was supposed to be a good-looking male. I just found him quite irritating. Going back and watching it now, I noticed that she seems almost shy and slightly flirtatious in his presence. He already knows all about her, so I assume that he's read her file, knows her in detail. Even though I've watched this scene several times now, I still can't figure out whether or not Quinn is putting on an act for this particular scene and the scenes that we see in this episode, or whether it's because it was early characterization and at that time his character wasn't supposed to last past season 2. So he was just going to be around for season 2 to kill off Brody. It was only later they decided to not kill Brody and also to keep Quinn around. So I'm not sure whether or not the characterization changed and that's why he seems different, or whether it's because Quinn was undercover and putting on an act.
So, you want to tell us your plan now?
Actually, it was the same.
The same plan?
Same plan.
So, I'm only half a moron.
In relation to the last scene, we never learn what Carrie's plan actually was. Clearly it wasn't the same as Quinn's, but she likes his idea enough to go along with it. And we get the first sense that these two might be quite simpatico and able to work together and might actually think and reason along the same lines.
You were fucking him, huh?
What?
Brody.
Who are you fucking?
An ER nurse. I'm not that into her.
You're pretty mouthy for an analyst.
I'm just saying, if he did to me what he did to you, got me fired and made me think I was crazy when I wasn't, send me off to get my brain zapped, I'd fucking rip his skin off.
Well, that's the plan.
So the last excerpt there contained 2 very quotable quotes. One being Quinn asking Carrie if she'd been fucking Brody, which was very blunt of him, and the other one where she says, "You're pretty mouthy for an analyst." Clearly he already knows the answers, he's just trying to unsettle her. He's coming across as being almost annoyingly nosy, and she's definitely feeling a little bit irritated, although it definitely also makes her very intrigued about who this guy is. Another thing I've noticed is that early season 2 Quinn speaks quite differently from the Quinn that we see later on in the series. In the early parts of season 2, he speaks much more snappily, smoothly, and he's got a much more upbeat manner about the way he speaks. It's almost like smart alecky. You know, in this episode you'll hear him say like that, quite a bit, and that's not a turn of phrase that we ever hear him really use again in later seasons. In later seasons, his voice also becomes quite husky. So either he has damaged his throat in the meanwhile, or he was putting on an act in the early parts of season 2, And then later on, the real Quinn comes out. But it is a little bit interesting the way not only his voice changes, but also his turn of phrase changes as well.
Looks like we're the night shift.
I don't have any plans.
Like Indian food?
Or Greek?
Greek, sure. I like olives.
I know a place.
Good.
What?
Brody,
What are we, girlfriends?
just want to know if you fell for him.
Why don't you answer some questions for me, Peter?
Like?
Where are you from?
Philadelphia.
The fancy part? Main line?
Like that. Yale School, Harvard.
Oh, good creds.
That's a requirement in our family.
You ever go back to Philly?
There's no good Indian food.
And why does Estes like you so much?
I'm pretty likable.
Oh, it's a matter of opinion.
And reliable. I am extremely reliable.
Wait a second, not to jump around, but as everyone knows, that is entirely contrary to what we learned in the finale of season 5.
And we found him when he was 16.
No, I didn't know that.
Foster home in Baltimore. The group was looking for a street kid. Someone real, but also pretty enough to turn the head of a Hong Kong paymaster. He was a natural from the start.
I believe it.
A couple years later, I sponsored him for training. Youngest guy ever.
So which is the true story? The privileged kid from Philadelphia or the foster kid from Baltimore? It's weird because a lot of people are pretty unhappy with the whole foster kid story. I have to admit that one of my earlier fics actually did have Quinn coming from a foster home. I can't even remember why I came up with that backstory. But it will be interesting to find out whether we ever get the truth of this. So if you go back to the exchange with Kerry where she's asking him about his background, again, his manner of speaking is very flippant. He, the way he says like that is quite un-Quinn. They're not quite flirting with each other, and certainly at the time I was watching it for the first time, I did not see any shippy prospects there. I just saw that there was a potential rapport between two colleagues. Looking back, I do see the fledgling possibilities of romantic interest. This next scene is kind of adorable, and I have to confess I really don't remember what went through my head the first time I watched it. But when I watch it now, I think about the fact that I don't think it's an act when Quinn tells her that she's good and she doesn't need to be nervous. I think he genuinely believes what he's saying, and what I find kind of endearing is that Carrie looks completely unnerved by his praise and his belief in her. She's such a smart and capable woman, and yet the praise that she gets is probably quite rare. Saul's not the sort to praise her. She probably doesn't have great relationships with her colleagues. And obviously, even though she's only known Peter Quinn for a very short period of time, she's come to trust and probably place a little bit of strength in his opinion. I didn't include the clip. There was a bit earlier on where she came in and Quinn praised her for doing a good job, and she also praised him for saying that he had a good setup with all the cameras and everything. So there's a lot of Carrie-Quinn interaction in this episode, which builds a relationship between colleagues. And like I said, at the time I didn't see the romantic element of it, but now I look back, I see that that's where it probably began.
Holy shit.
It's on.
Hell yeah.
So what's the play?
Well, as far as we know, he didn't go to his handler yet.
So we spook him more? Make him report back?
Drop something about Ab in his ear.
Straight out?
Too bold?
Screw it. We don't have a lot of time. These fuckers are planning something.
I'll loop everyone in.
Crap, I'm nervous.
I'm not. You're good.
Okay. Right.
You can hear the excitement and nervousness in Carrie's voice. You can see the way that the two of them are bouncing ideas off each other, that they're functioning at basically the same wavelength. And then when Quinn praises her, you can see that Carrie's very flattered and she doesn't really know how to process that or what to do with it. Like I said, I actually think it's genuine praise. I don't think that that was part of Quinn's act.
Jesus, how many times you gotta tell us something?
A lot.
That last short clip featuring exasperated Quinn is quite close to the Quinn that we know right now in terms of being torn between exasperation and admiration for Carrie's boldness and stubbornness. So by the end of this episode, they've established that there's a new character, he's interacting with Carrie. There's no suggestion at that point that there's anything other than, a working relationship between them. And for me, when I was watching it, even though I'm very shippy, I was not seeing any ships in Homeland at that point. So I was just trying to figure out how this new character fit into the rest of the storyline and what it was going to mean for Carrie's ability to achieve her objectives. Now when I rewatch these scenes, I'm wearing shipper goggles, so I'm thinking, okay, she feels nothing, but he's already started to feel something.